Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Over the Head Podcast, episode number 5. And we had, obviously, last week come off a champ series, now rolling into some recap in the college. Last week was some good games, some upsets, some teams might not be back. And then this week coming up, we got some big matchups. And I think the teams that are going to be contenders are going to start separating themselves from the pack, and we'll see heading into this week. And Scott, you got anything?
Yeah, conference play for the Patriot League at least starts, so it'll be an interesting, I think, week to talk about college lacrosse. Things start to settle in, but let's start with the PLL as we always do. And I'm curious. So I think for me, Kyle, the conversations I've been having this week are like, you come out of sixes. For some teams, you feel like it gives you a sense of what's coming for the summer. But like in general, as we go into off-season number 2 and the start of free agency and we get into the lead up for the summer, I'd love to know like what you think about, where teams stand as they look at free agency in the summer. Like who's going to be making moves in free agency with the thought of like, we're building a champion, who's going to be, maybe making moves that are more like, this isn't probably the year, but we're building for the future.
Yeah, I think, for the most part, I don't know if it was episode 1 or 2, we kind of touched on, the free agency. And I think the guys that are, your Trevor Baptiste already re-signed with the Atlas, but your big names, I think, are going to go back to their teams. But they've only announced, I think, 1 or 2 players re-signing. I don't think we're going to see a ton of movement. I think we could see 1 or 2 players jump teams. The Carolina Chaos, new coaching staff. When I was playing on the Atlas and Ben Rubier came in, like that one year I played there, and then he kind of just reshuffled the deck, got rid of guys, signed new players.
So I don't know why, because you guys were really doing well.
That was a low point in my life at that point in time.
Coming out of the bubble, right? And
yeah.
tough time to be a bull. 2020
for sure.
So I agree. Like the Chaos are the team to watch. I mean, I've heard rumblings of like you hear this every offseason. Are the Canadians going to play? Like, is Byrne playing? Is Dane Smith coming back? Like, so that's going to be really probably in free agency. The most interesting storyline is like, what do they do with that roster? What do they keep? They've got some good young pieces. Like, how much are they going to shake things up? The overreaction for me is like, you just look at the Cannons. We talked about this last time. And you're like, man, this team looks ready to, win, and win now with kind of the way that their star players played in sixes. Who are the teams that you think going into the season are championship or bust?
Yeah, I think the New York Atlas, right? I think the last 2 years, the roster they've built, where they've gotten, that heartbreaking game versus the Whip Snakes, that overtime game, I think they're a championship or bust. I think 100% championship or bust for them. The Archers, obviously, they're hungry to go back to back to back. And then the Cannons. I think the Cannons are how they're positioned right now with 3 and 4, the picks in the draft, depending on who picks where. Curse is definitely going to go 1, and then what teams do at 2 and 3 after that is going to be interesting. But the Cannons are definitely going to get somebody that is going to be of value, and they're a contender, right? They have a defense that's, I think, one of the best in the league. You get Jack Kilty back off that Achilles injury, and I've been seeing videos of him training. He looks freaking good, and he looks like he did last year.
He was the best. 2 years ago, he was the best player on the Cannons defense. Last year, they go out and they get Epple, and then Kilty tears his ACL in training camp.
Achilles.
Because it's not the offensive side of the ball, and that's all anybody ever talks about in pro lacrosse is who scores goals. I think it flies under the radar, but having Kilty and Epple, this will be the first time in like the Brian Holman Cannons era where I'd say like on paper the defense looks like there are no obvious holes. Like you went out to get Epple to kind of solidify with Kilty. You didn't have them both last year, so you guys had to plug a lot of gaps. So okay, so Archers, Cannons, Atlas. I split my kind of teams up into 3 groups here: contenders, like on the fence, pretenders, or builders, whatever. People that just, and from my perspective, don't have a chance this year. I think we're aligned. The Archers, the Cannons, and the Atlas are the 3 teams that are like go for broke, win a championship this year. Is there anybody else you would add in that group? And if not, who do you put in that next kind of tier of teams maybe that could go either way, right? Could be competing for championships or could be having to go back and look at a rebuild.
Yeah, I think the Redwoods are an interesting one. I don't know if they've made coaching changes, or I don't know what's happening with them, but they're an interesting one, right? I think Rob Pennell, once we talked about this and touched on it, he wants to win now, but I think they're a team that I did not see making a push in making a championship run this year. So I put them at definitely rebuilding and trying to find out their identity and what they're going to do. It'd be interesting to see how they play coming out this season, but they're not on my list to come back and make a championship or a contender this year. So outside of that, the Carolina Chaos, big question mark on them. We don't know what their roster looks like. We don't know what's going to happen. They got a lot of free agents. Are they going to leave the team? Is Colsey bringing other guys in? We don't know there. So I got that. Those top three teams are my teams that are going to make a run, and then outside of that, like the Chaos and the Redwoods, I don't have them high on my list making that. So
interesting. So I built my list the exact same. So Archers, Cannons, Atlas, championship or bust category. My on the fence group. So the Whips, obviously they were in the championship last year. So you got to think there's a lot of upside. It seemed a little bit like that team overachieved, right? They were dreadful in sixes. We don't really know that carries over, but I think they could go either way. They could be right back at that level, or maybe they're not quite there. The Water Dogs are really interesting, right? They add Zed. I mean, that's like a go for broke kind of move. You obviously have McCardle, who's a veteran, and like this core for the Water Dogs, if it doesn't happen this year, it's probably break it down and to some extent and start over to rebuild. So to me, they're like an on the fence, like they could tip, and that Zed, Sowers, Kieran, and everybody's healthy, they could be really good, or it could all fall apart and they're kind of back starting from scratch. And then the Outlaws, like super young, talented group last year, seemed like they were going in the right direction. So they're another one which, like, are they quite there to take that next step and be a championship contender? To me, they're more like the trending up, more like the Whips, where probably, but if it's not this year, they're going to be in the conversation to come, the way that they've got that young core together. And then I agree. I just don't see it. I don't really understand what the Redwoods are doing with their roster. I mean, we'll see what they do in free agency, but it just doesn't seem like they have a plan. They've really made any moves that open my eyes. And then the Chaos are, I mean, again, you've got Blaze. Hopefully you've got Josh Byrne. Like, it's hard to rule them out, but you lose Andy Towers and a lot of the personality of that team and how much change. And then the Chrome, I think, are going to be a pretender. Are the Chrome still a team?
I think they're the Outlaws. Yeah.
18th. So.
And then so the Outlaws, right, for them on my list, just like, their attack, like, what are they going to do with Wisnauskas? If I'm them, I'm trading Wisnauskas. I don't know if he's a free agent. I'm not sure, but like Wisnauskas would really.
I don't think so. I think guys coming to the league on 3-year deals is what I'm kind of gathering. So he would be on the last year of his rookie contract. But I'm with you. Like, I get that he's really good and Brennan's really good, and you want to make them work together. But like, you could probably get a lot for him.
Yeah.
And there would be buyers, and you could go out and get a piece that, you don't need a lefty wing stretch shooter. Like, you've got the best in the world. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I mean, the teams, the rosters are always interesting. And then, the Water Dogs are, like you touched on that. They got the guys. They just, like last year, every game seemed to be a one goal game the entire year. So they're obviously right there. They've been there before. They know how to get it done. So yeah, but the top three for me, obviously Cannons, Archers, Atlas are my top three. And then, like you said, that like the Outlaws, they're young, and then on their back line, they got, how much longer is Jesse Bernhardt and Mike Manley going to play? I mean, they've been doing it for, I don't know, they got to be 13 years, 14 years, and they're still doing it.
Bernhardt, that's right. And Manley even a year or two older than Bernhardt. I saw he's running around out there for the Swarm.
Yeah, great. He's playing indoor still.
I mean, guys, like police officer in upstate New York and then playing in both leagues, like that's unbelievable. But that group, with JT Giles Harris as well, like it's well built. Like, they've got, having him, I think, allows like Manley and Jesse to like extend their careers, because they're not having to guard, they're guarding the number 2 and the number 3, and it's a lot more off ball and quarterbacking defense, not having to chase Michael Sowers around or something like that. So it is a good fit, but yeah, that'll be interesting. I would expect to see them like go defense in the draft and just, at least start some sort of contingency plan to get younger there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I mean, I think all those teams, right? Like we kind of agree the Chaos and the Redwoods, huge question marks, but the Archers, Cannons, Atlas, Whips, Dogs, Outlaws, like wouldn't shock me to see any of them really have a great summer. So before we talk about college lacrosse, I do have one bonus topic coming out of sixes. So some feedback from the listeners, great opportunity to get an interview, right? Maybe, you coached on the Cannons, right? I think last year.
Did.
So for some people who don't know, I have a really close relationship, right, with Marcus, played 4 seasons captains together on the Archers. I actually officiated his wedding to the darlings of the lacrosse media world, Alex Ostholman and Marcus Holman. I physically married them, brought them together in union on the beaches of Tulum.
I was at his bachelor party too, so
the championship game finishes, and of course we shoot out some texts. Marcus, can we get you on? Let's do a recap. Let's talk. I think Bubba Fairman, right? I think busy Bubba was I'm in the airport. I don't know. I can do it. We don't hear anything back from Marcus. We don't hear anything back from Kirsty. I'm not online, Kyle. So I didn't see this right away. But then I come to find that right around the same time we're recording, Marcus and Brian Holman are sitting on a couch and they're doing an interview with those two guys. And I want to be clear about this. The Lacrosse Network, I believe is what it's called, is owned by what entity? Do you know?
State-run media, right? It's owned by the government.
The Premier Lacrosse League. It is owned by, so we're not getting texts back for guests to come on the show. So, but they're probably being forced to go on state-run media 100%. And do interviews immediately following the game to talk about Asher Nolting's diet when, we're over here sitting on probably that take at least 30 minutes before them. I got a problem with that. So yeah. I think you reported to the FCC. Like, I don't know if the PLL is telling them, no, you can't go talk to these guys. You got to come over here and do our podcast with Belkey and Dukes. But that is a problem. And I think the only way that we really can get to the bottom of it is we do need our listeners to probably bully, in particular Marcus, but anybody online who's ducking coming on here and answering real questions. You're not going to get the softball questions, on the show. You're going to get confronted with the real things, and we need our listeners' support to attract the right guests to spruce up the show a little bit. That's my shout out. That's my beef of the day.
Yeah, and shout out Bubba. Bubba actually picked up a FaceTime, so he was the only guy in the Cannons locker room that picked up a call. But everybody else was just Marcus
gassing us.
I actually texted Marcus because we had talked about that, and he texted me back, "I'm out." That's all he said. It was just, "I'm out," and I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess you're like, you're drinking, you're celebrating. I get it. You don't want to come on the podcast." And I see him on that podcast. I'm like, what's going on here, Marcus? So
yeah. Well, anyway, let it be known we're coming. We're coming for the state-run media and all who support it. And if we got to bootstrap this thing and do it ourselves, we will. So that's all I got on that topic. Should we go into college lacrosse then?
Let's do it.
All right. So what do you think? Big story coming out of this week of college lacrosse.
Go ahead.
Is Cuse good? Is Gary Gate a good coach? Was he even a good player?
I'm
starting to wonder if anything is true up there.
Yeah, I don't. Cuse, I mean, it's either that or, Harvard, I think, actually has some ballers on that team. Watching them play,
for sure.
But at the end of the day, like, Cuse can't be losing these games if they want to be a contender. Like, especially in the Dome, like it's a hard place to play for teams coming in, and like the way and the fashion they lost, like they were up 6-0, and then a little bit of goalie controversy, right? They pull McCool, and like he only had like 4 saves. I think the kid that came in behind him had 5. Like that was an issue, right? Them not saving the ball, but like Harvard was getting quality shots. Like they weren't, not that they should have saved all of them, but like you need your goalie to make some stops. And so pulling a goalie out in a big game and putting a backup that's not proven, that's tough. And I think that actually had an effect on, the balls going in the back of the net, obviously. But I think Harvard's a good team. And Jerry Byrne, actually in the interview, they were talking about like Cuse and everything, and he actually stopped and he was like, "Hey, Cuse is back." He's like, "Cuse is back. This team is very good. You're gonna see them. You're gonna see them in the NCAA tournament." Like he said, he even said it. He was like, "Cuse is back," and I don't know if that was like, who knows, but him saying that, he's a good coach, but him also saying that means he's like pumping Harvard up a little bit, I think, as well. So
Yeah.
But the goalie thing is obviously you pull McCool. McCool's been unbelievable the last 3 weeks and keeping him in games and making big saves. And yeah, it was tough to see him get pulled because I'm sure that hopefully that lights a fire under his ass coming up for this week.
Do you know what my number one sign that Cuse is not back is? The Harvard coach saying Cuse is back after beating Cuse in the dome.
Is that a chirp? Was he chirp? I might have been chirping him.
There's literally nothing that like I've ever heard in my life that would suggest Cuse is less back than that happening.
Hey, you guys did good. You're back. You're back. You're not good. You're not better than we are, but you're back.
Harvard
saying that. Yeah.
And I agree. Like Harvard's a nice team, but like there's just it's disappointing. I was on the Cuse bandwagon because one, they're so fun to watch. Like they play this awesome style, and I just like it for college lacrosse. Like when Cuse is doing that and has up tempo and has stars, like it's great for the game, but like this isn't good. And my biggest warning sign, Heartsy, for them coming out of that is like they won like 80% of the faceoffs or something like that. So they dominate possession, and their offense has a decent game, and they're down 2 and they get a 3-minute non-releasable with 2.5 minutes left, and I'm thinking, they're gonna squeak this out. They score a goal right away, and then Hiltz turns the ball over on the next possession, and then they get a double team, and they just don't quite manage the clock right, and they run down. They don't get a shot on cage at the end of the game. So they got problems up there. I still think they're good. Like it's not ring the alarms. Like they're not a terrible team, but back-to-back losses to the first 2, top 15 teams they've played, like that's not a good sign. Other things that stood out, quick, I think we should definitely talk about Hop UNC. Like that was the game of the weekend, probably in terms of quality games. And that was the first one that like it had the ESPN broadcast crew. It had the Homewood camera angles, everything.
Quint and Nish Kark. Oh, it's good.
Yeah. Kark looked like a Peaky Blinder. Did you see?
Yeah, I did. It was that.
Peaky Blinder hat and the scarf on. It's like, the ESPN crew is back, which I don't know if I talked about this last week, but it is a little bit of a realization I was having, which is like, the end of the season, I think it's kind of like once college basketball ends, the college lacrosse becomes much more watchable because they get more of the real ESPN slots that right now go to college basketball, and you get the A team and you get the A production team. So it's like what they do is you get all pissed off in February and like March, and then in April and May, it's like watching college lacrosse is awesome. So then you forget. Yeah. Because April, May was so fun to watch. You forget all off season, and then you get back to February and it's like, what the fuck is this stream? And so I figured it out in my head, like, why does this seem so much worse to me this year? And then when I was watching that game, I was like, because this is what it looks like, like most of the time, or at least in the second half of the season. But sorry, sidetrack. So Cornell smokes Denver. Like,
go back. I want to go back to Hopkins real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. I think we should talk a lot about that game.
Did Quint Kesnick go to Johns Hopkins? He did, right? Yes, he did. I mean, there was a segment in that game. He chirped Hopkins for like, it might have been 2 minutes. Just like, this team's not proven. They haven't played anyone. I mean, he just like was laying into somebody at Hopkins did something wrong to him. But it seems like some of the broadcasts, Hopkins, he always makes it a point to just say something negative about his alma mater. So I just wanted to make that point.
It is true. I think the issue there might be that Quint is too online.
Yeah.
And I think he sees too much feedback of him being a Hopkins homer, and now he's overcorrecting by being like, I don't want to take the criticism that I only cheer for Hopkins, so let me just rip like the best start Hopkins has had in a decade.
Yeah.
So you might be right. So let's go into that game, but just other ones just quickly before because I think there's a lot to talk about there.
Sure.
Let's just call out like Cornell smokes Denver. To me, Maryland, Notre Dame, Cornell look like the 3 clear like teams to beat right now. I mean, that's an impressive score. We don't really know exactly what Denver is. They can't run by anybody, but like 15-5 is a beatdown.
Dude, Kirst was 6. He had, I think, 6 and 1. He was 100% shooting. 6 shots, 6 goals. Goldstein was 1 and 6. He's dishing a rock. Like they're good. They're going to be, because it's always, you don't talk too much about the Ivy Leagues because they don't play right away. All the other teams are playing, and then they start playing. But like, I mean, when he was coming out, they had like a slow-mo video of him coming out of the locker room, and he's wearing like these tight shorts with his thighs showing. Dude, he looks like a linebacker. He's so damn big, and he is so built for the PLL. He is going to be an absolute matchup problem, and he's a guy that obviously his natural position is attack, but you can't tell me that kid can't run through the midfield and play defense. Like the kid's an athlete.
He is.
He's gonna be scary. He'll be scary on a PLL field.
Connor Busick, by the way, is like 31 years old.
Yeah.
And he's already been to a national championship game, and Cornell just looks well coached.
Defense looks really good.
Machine.
Yeah.
You see it in the NFL, young, handsome coaches. I'd love to see like a little run in college lacrosse. Like Justin Ward is an assistant in Army. Like they are overachieve every year. Like get some early 30s head coaches. Like because Busick was like 27 when he got that head coaching job, which is insane.
He was still playing professional.
Shout out to him. Yeah, really, really impressive. Duke, Michigan. So I had a text from my mom that said your co-host called it the Duke Michigan game of the week. So
pound sign.
Kyle was right.
Yeah, that game. That game was at Duke. Obviously, went back and forth, and Duke was actually, they were down 2 or no, they were down 3 at one point. And then McAdory just kind of took over the game. 7-5. He dodged full speed, then he right at the triangle of the cage, slowed down, changed direction, and defender had to navigate the triangle of the cage, came around, scored it 7-6, and then he gets on a short stick D-Mitty, pretty much the same exact dodge, doesn't stop this time, just goes topside, scores, no slide. I don't know what the hell Michigan's defense was doing because he was untouched when he came topside. And then in overtime, he did the same thing. They actually slid, but he just threw the ball in cage and it went in. But McAdory just hit the switch and he just took over that game. Which I think they're him doing that is going to put them in good spots to win games. They're going to need their big players to step up. And he's a guy that he creates a lot of problems. They run him out of midfield. You can't short stick Johnston, so it's who are you? You got to make a decision there. So he's going to give some defenses some problems, and Michigan didn't have a solution for it. So,
but for me, McAdory is really good. Both those teams they're fine.
Fine.
They're fine. It was a fine game between two fine teams.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, they're fine. Maryland is better than fine.
Yeah.
Maryland just
Terps are the Terps.
Yeah, they terped again. They just coast over Princeton. They're in control the whole game. It never it's boring, honestly. That's how you know they're terping, when they're boring. It's just they just squeeze you. They just keep a 2 to 3 goal cushion all game long. There's no electric individual performance. There's no crazy stat lines from anybody. They got 8 dudes who get on the score sheet. Their goalie plays well. It's just
they're so disciplined on offense. I mean, it reminds me of the World Games when you get a 3-goal lead and you don't have to score. You just get the ball around 20 times and then go, and the defense is going to F up at some point. That's what that reminds me of. Their offense is so methodical. No one's doing anything special. It's just
I wouldn't know. I never played in the World Games.
Wee ball.
Okay. But you're right. They even with the shot clock, they have a way of taking the air out of the ball that just and it's not stall ball. Their offense is when we were critical of them, and I think a lot of people early just do they have the guy? They still don't have a to Wharton finalist, although big fella there, number 7,
Walters.
He's showing up week after week, and he's kind of the engine that makes them go offensively. But they have 10 dudes who put up 1 to 2 points every freaking game. So it's it's very hard to cover them because you don't exactly know they just share the ball and work for good shots. And then it's like whoever the ball ends up with, that kid is capable of scoring. Like, it's just, so they're a great team, and their defense is a problem. And, it just seems like they're going to, they play Notre Dame next week. So that's going to be
an awesome game.
I mean, those look like the clear top 2 teams in the country here early in the season. So like, that's really exciting.
Did you negotiate that game getting into Atlanta?
Yeah, they're playing at Georgia Tech, which, by the way, like, it's going to be awesome. The stadium's right downtown. It's a great stadium, like city stadium, old college football stadium.
Hell yeah.
The Atlanta lacrosse community, I suspect, will show up. I mean, there's a lot of Georgia kids on both teams. Like, you've got starters out there on both teams that are from Atlanta, which is really cool. So that's going to be a big time game. I don't know if that's on TV. I haven't looked at that yet. But I'm hoping
ACC network, which kind of sucks. I was hoping it was going to be on ESPN because you got to buy that. So
yeah, well, that'll be one to look forward to. So let's talk about Hop UNC. So that game was so exciting. I think we talked about Q's. Like, the other two, are they back teams here, UNC and Hopkins, and UNC really relies on 2 guys, on Petro and Duffy offensively, and they get it done. They get enough from those 2 players. They are studs, and that was an unreal performance by both of them. I mean, I think, who didn't see it coming from Petro, right? You grow up on that field. Your dad's the head coach. He got fired there.
Yeah.
Like that. I think that was as predictable of a big time performance as there is, but still cool to see him do it. He's got, I don't know about the haircut, but he's got a lot of he's got a lot of gusto, a lot of gravitas, as they say, on the field. He's fun to watch. And he was slinging the ball for sure. And then Duffy, behind Kirst, that's probably your next best offensive player in the country for my money.
Like Duffy 4-1, and then Petro 6 goals. Like, pretty cool to see a Pietramala on that field again. Obviously, there hasn't been a Pietramala on that field since Dave Pietramala. No one's throwing over the head checks, but he's just, I mean, he was shooting the ball from Charles Street a couple times. I mean, it was crazy, his release and how quick he gets it out. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Byrne when he played at Hopkins. Like, he just big wind up and just the ball is just humming. He can shoot from anywhere. But yeah, like, outside of those 2 though, like, there's not a ton of production and guys that are stepping up, which is going to be interesting to watch, right? It's going to be interesting to see if teams prep for that and take them out of games. It's easier said than done, obviously, because there's ways to get them the ball anyway. But
yeah, so here's my take on, and we should talk. Like, Melendez was also phenomenal, by the way. Like, we should hit on that. I mean, Hop, just like, it kept seeming like they were going to be out of the game, and then they kept finding answers. But first, my take on UNC, like, you've got those 2 guys that are studs offensively and that are going to give people problems, and then you have other talented guys. Like, they're probably, that'll probably regress to the mean a little bit, where like those 2 guys were like 95% of their points in this game. It'll probably be more like 60 to 70 most games. And I think they do have other guys that can find goals here or there. The thing that was going to be the X factor for me with them was the goalie play, right? Ficaro. And he's been really good this season, and he's proven really good in the past. He didn't play well in this game. He was, I mean, statistically going into the 4th quarter, it was actually a nightmare of a game.
Yeah.
But then late in the game, he wins a run out to the end line on a huge possession, save on the kind of the last 2 possessions where Hopkins has a chance to get back into the game. That's going to be the X factor for me. Like, if he shows up and can be like a first team, second team All-American type goalie, then I think UNC is going to be a problem. Because now you're saying we know who we are. We know we're Duffy, Petro-led offense. We know where the ball is going. We need a big goal, and we got guys that can get it. We need to, over the course of the season, develop, some 3rd and 4th and 5th options offensively. Like, that's a realistic thing you can do over the course of the year. And then defensively, you can build a style of play in a way that, let's pack the paint. Let's give up outside shots. Let's trust that he's going to, bail us out a lot. He was sloppy clearing the ball. Like, there's things I think he needs to improve on from that game. But I think, like, the way that he made those plays late tell me, like, he's kind of got the it factor. And, I'm really intrigued. Like, I do think UNC's got a lot to like. If they can, it's a big if, but like, if they can improve over the course of the season and continue to get better and better, I think they do have the talent to be there at the end of the year.
Yeah, and you touched on it. Melendez, right? He had 5 goals, 2 assists. Chevette was kind of quiet. He had a lot of good looks at Cage, just didn't hit it. He had 2 assists, but the Hopkins offense is in the way the ball's moving. They're going to be obviously one of the teams that are going to be in it towards the end. But they got it.
Duke, Michigan are fine. Hopkins, UNC are like, pretty good. And then like Cornell, Maryland, Notre Dame are like, yes, very good. Yeah. That's the official rat tiers.
Yeah,
pretty good.
And it'll be obviously UVA. They're not what we thought they were, but they play Hopkins this week. I don't know if that game's at Klockner or it's at Homewood, but they better win that one. So that it's always a big rivalry game, and we'll see what happens there. But that'll be interesting to watch that one.
Yeah, how do you bounce back after a tough loss? Good game, tough loss. Always interested to see what happens the next week. I mean, we saw it with Cuse. You take that loss, you have a chance to come back and beat a good team at home, and you don't, will Hop do the same thing? Which, if you look at recent history, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Cuse and Hop have kind of been on the same parallel thing where it's they were so good, and then they just haven't been able to get over the hump for the last, whatever it is, 5-10 years. A little bit of deja vu happening right now from my perspective.
And then Millen, I don't know if you saw that, Millen got hit and then crushed, and not many of his teammates stepped up and did anything, which was kind of interesting to see. I mean, if that's one of my teammates, I'm fucking punching somebody. But
not a good weekend for Virginia. He gets hurt. They get bullied by a team that hasn't looked very good so far. I'll wait and see. To me, they're not Cuse or Hop. They've Lars and I don't know. I'm a little bit wait and see on them still. But they're getting no midfield production. Millen, I don't know what that injury is. I don't know if you know, but if he's out for a while, that's going to be a problem. Their offense is not doing much.
Yeah. So
I keep looking over at my notes, and every time I look over it, I'm trying to find what college lacrosse games are coming up. I just see big bold letters: state-run media, Trader Holman report to FCC.
Can't believe that guy. Did you do something to him?
Oh my God!
Officiated his wedding. There's probably so many other weddings you could have officiated for pro lacrosse players that week. And you chose his.
Pelkey and Dukes, they're getting. It's really Mark's fault. They're getting caught up here in the crossfire. They're probably really good guys, but
they seem like good guys.
Is what it is.
Probably better guys. They probably better guys than Marcus, I would assume.
Okay, so all right. So one other quick thing on college, and then we can get into. I think we have some fun stuff to talk about here and share some stories. But you sent me a note Richmond and Colgate, 2 teams to kind of keep an eye on as potential spoilers. Richmond continues to look good. They play Cornell on Sunday this week, so it'll be another chance to see them. The win against Virginia all of a sudden isn't quite as sparkly as it was, right?
Loyola gets their first win versus Colgate this weekend, or not first win. They get a win this weekend versus Colgate.
Well, it'll be their first win of the season. But I do kind of agree. I like both those teams. The Patriot League in general, obviously Army's doing what Army always does, and they're recently they're really freaking good again. But in general, the top tier Patriot League teams are kind of spoiler teams. There's a lot of teams in that league: Colgate, BU, Loyola, Lehigh, and then Navy and Army, where it's any given Saturday they can beat anybody. You got to watch out when you play them, but they're not putting teams in the Final Four unless Army can break through, since Loyola was there whenever they were there with Pat Spencer or whatever before that. One note on Richmond, I was just going to share, Coach Shamati, but probably the big reason I continue to come back and be so high on them is because of him.
Yeah.
And I played for him at Loyola. He was our offensive coordinator when we won the national championship in 2012. And I think the anecdotal story I would share is when I got to Loyola, he was probably not the most popular coach, and he was tough. I mean, he was a grinder of a coach. He was the film study recruit so hard. He was he was the grinder, but he had a way of coaching people really hard, and maybe sometimes I don't know, killing confidence, or I can remember we had a really talented midfielder who could kind of shake anybody, but then had a tendency to fade away from the cage. And Shamati would send him into the locker room and be put on bigger elbow pads and come back out because he wasn't leaning into the dodges. And that kid would just be like, what the fuck? Like, I can't make this guy happy. And when we had a really bad season in 2011, the year before we won the championship, he, like, with some of Coach Toomey's help, like, he came back in 2012 and he had a entirely different philosophy and approach, not just X's and O's, but also, like, I don't know, he just, like, opened up to us about, like, kind of his perspective and him remembering we're college kids and, like, you know, and it's not that he didn't still coach as hard. And from what I hear at Richmond, like, he is still who he is. He's West Jenny guy. He's disciplined. He has high expectations. But we came out and had the best offense in the country in 2012 and went on that crazy run and won the championship, and he gets the head coaching job at Richmond. And I just think it's a really good example. We talk about, like, young coaches. Like, he just demonstrated, like, how to take his strengths, continue to play it to him. He continues to be one of the hardest workers, best studied, you know, coaches in the game. And then he adds in kind of this, like, perspective that comes with experience to, you know, figure out how to kind of generate more buy-in. And you just look at the success he's had at Richmond. I mean, a brand new program when they started. Like, look at other programs that came in brand new in the last 10 years. Like, you don't see any of them
in the top 20.
The Jacksonville's and the High Points, like, they flirt with it, but Richmond is the one that just consistently every year is winning their conference. They're making the tournament. They're playing the big dogs close. So I'm just going to keep doubling down on that. Like, my bet on him to, you know, if it's not this team, which it might be, I think in the next couple of years, you're going to see him put together a group that can break through. I think they were really close. They lost to Penn in overtime in the first round. Like, they, like, played Duke close in the first round. Like, they've been really close. I just think they're knocking on the door. I think they're going to break through soon.
Good point. It's a very good point. And another thing I'm looking at, there's not one game on ESPN this week. Like national television. It's all web streams.
That's what I'm saying. It's college basketball, dude. It's going to get worse with March coming because, like, all the college basketball conference tournaments are going to take all those slots. So it's going to be a lot of streams.
The other game I had marked down that's going to be an interesting one is Duke and Princeton. That'll be also a good game to watch.
Yeah.
I think.
So next week we talked about Maryland, Notre Dame. I just highlighted Richmond, Cornell could be interesting. Patriot League conference play starts, so a lot of those teams that I just mentioned that are those mid tiers are going to start playing each other. Hop, UVA, we touched on it. Then I think the other, it's actually a 4-pack. It's UNC, Penn, and Duke, Princeton on Friday, and then on Sunday those matchups switch. So Duke, Penn, and UNC, Princeton on Sunday. So that's I'm assuming Penn and Princeton are going down to North Carolina and they're, you know, playing Duke and UNC, and then they're switching on Sunday and playing the other two. Like that, all those games will be really interesting, will be really telling. It's always fun to see what the Ivy League does outside of itself, because once they get into conference play, like, you can fall into this, like, they're all really good because they play each other really well. These games tell us a lot. Like, which of you Ivy League teams are really, like, Final Four type teams? I think we feel like we know that about Cornell. Did Princeton just get terped, or, like, are you guys the real deal? You know, and Maryland's a tough matchup. Like, the 2 games for them, Duke, UNC. Like, let's see. If you go 0-2, you're fine, probably.
It'd be a shame if they
2-0, you're really good.
It'd be a shame because they got obviously a shit ton of veterans on that roster on Princeton. Like, their entire offense from last year's there. Like, I think they'll be a contender for sure.
I do too. I would bet on them to do well. So, okay, so we've got some time left. You know, one thing that we've talked about, like, obviously our bread and butter being the PLL, wanting, you know, covering pro lacrosse, where we spent so much time. Some of the feedback we've heard from listeners is, like, just continue to get into storytelling and finding ways to do that. So we kind of sourced, like, a lot of questions and maybe prompts to just share a little bit about pro lacrosse and how we think about it and some of our experiences in it. So we'll kind of wrap up today with just going through some of these Q&As, and we'll each take a crack at answering some of these questions, and then we'll call it a day.
Cool.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So the first one, which I love, and in nature, right? We love to go at other people on this show. We also got to own, you know, our own shortcomings. The question was, what's the worst loss of your pro career? And my immediate reaction was, man, I've had a lot of them. So I don't know how to pick. But why don't you start? I'll start on the next one. But why don't you start on the worst loss of your pro career and you know, the story behind it?
I would say the Bayhawks semifinal game, Hurricane game, at Marine Corps Stadium for the MLL playoffs. We had won a face-off. I picked up the GB. I got a clear cut to going to the goal. I shoot it. I think it was like a bouncer I shot, and then it was in tight. It was like 10 yards, and Burke saves it. They clear it, go down. That's when Quinzani scores, and the game ended right after that. So that would probably be my worst loss because of the implications of it. Because if we win, we go to the championship, and I had an opportunity to put the ball in the back of the net, and I did not. And
so that was the year the Cannons won the championship,
yep,
right?
That was the year.
So that would have been my senior 2013 or 2012.
Yeah, and right after I shot it,
summer.
Yeah, Sweeney picks it up. They go down, Sweeney breaks out. It's like kind of like a fast break. They throw it to Quinzani, and then they score. It was that was really heartbreaking. But that
game was this is like for the only the true MLL junkies that are going to remember this. But it was in the middle of a hurricane. The entire field was flooded. Wasn't the score 6-5 or something like that?
it was a low scoring game.
Nobody know where you're in Annapolis.
90 mile. It was 90 mile an hour winds. It was crazy.
Everybody else is boarded up in their houses in Annapolis, and you guys are out there playing in front of a completely empty stadium.
Downtown Annapolis is flooded.
And so that's the nice thing about these MLL moments. Is nobody was there to remember it.
Nope.
Besides the guys who are in the game.
We're gonna tee up some footage. I'm gonna find some footage. I'll tee it up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's I've seen footage of that game. I don't know that I knew you had a shot in overtime.
Yeah.
To win it. So that's tough. So the ball didn't just land in the puddle and stop. You did at least force a save.
It was on the run like this, and then throwing it at the cage, and it hit probably about a 2 foot of water, and then Burke picked it up.
Yeah. Tough. So my worst loss is. In 2000, I guess it was 2017 Atlanta Blaze season. So we were, to just set some context here, Atlanta Blaze, the second season of our existence, we're already on our second head coach and we're on our second owner. So I was on this awesome Cannons team, and I basically asked for a trade to go play at home, which was a mistake. Looking back, I wanted to play in Atlanta and be a part of helping to grow, the game here in Atlanta and whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I get traded to Atlanta, and it wasn't a mistake. They were great years, but
100%.
The Cannons, we were really good. And I walked into what turned out to be a little bit of a shit show of an organization. So second owner, second coach, but the biggest blessing of the entire experience, the second coach was Dave Huntley.
Yeah.
Legendary coach, just made such a big impact on me in the couple years I got to play for him there. So we're 2-5. So we're coming off a bad first season. Team sells. New owners a little intense, let's say. Coach Huntley's trying to right the ship, and we can't figure it out. And then from 2-5, we win 2 straight games. So we get to 3-5. Then we win again on a Saturday to get to 4-5, finally a little bit of momentum. That game's on Saturday. We're playing at Denver in the 4th of July game on Tuesday. So we play game Saturday, 4th of July game is on Tuesday. I don't know why, and unfortunately we've lost Coach Huntley, so we can't go ask him what led him to make this decision. But I think because we were in such turmoil, and we won 2 in a row, and it was overtime win, 1 goal win. And then we all were going to travel as a team, which you didn't get this often, right? In pro lacrosse, where it's the whole team's going to stay together for an extended period of time. We played Saturday. We all had to go to Denver Tuesday. So the whole team was staying in Atlanta Saturday night, Sunday night. Then we were flying to Denver Monday morning to play in the 4th of July game on Tuesday. For people who don't remember, the 4th of July game was the biggest game of the summer in the MLL. You'd have 30,000 people there in the Bronco Stadium in Denver. It was always an incredible atmosphere. Obviously, the Outlaws were always a good team, so it was a big deal to get to play in that game. So Huntley decides it's going to be a good idea for us to blow off some steam together on Sunday, and he takes us to Topgolf and puts down an open bar and basically sets the tone this is we're gonna have some fun here together. So the guys, we had some fun. We drank a bunch of beers. We golfed. We, probably ended up out in Buckhead a little later than we should have been. I remember having a moment late at night or early in the morning, and I'm looking at Adam Gittleman, our starting goalie, and Jake Withers, and I'm sitting in there in this room, and it's 3 a.m. and we're all a little tuned up thinking like, whew, like we gotta play a game like at altitude in like under 48 hours. Like this is an interesting situation that we're in. So we get on the plane. We wake up the next morning early. We fly to Denver. You can see it, like from Coach Hunt's to GM Spencer Ford to like every single guy on the team. We just look tired when we get to the airport together to board the plane. We fly to Denver, and of course, like the Outlaws are ready to play on 4th of July. Like this is their huge showcase game. They're a wagon. They probably, I don't even know, but they're probably defending champs, and they probably won the championship that year because the Outlaws always won the fucking championship. So like they're loaded. We go into that game, and I can just give you an anecdote of that game. So I mentioned Wiz Kid, Jake Withers, burning both sides of the candle there. He went 30% against Tommy Kelly at the faceoff X. So a matchup that normally would be a little 50-50, maybe even slant towards Wiz. We don't win any faceoffs. We lose the game 24-12, I believe was the final score, but it might have been like 20-3 at one point in the game. I had an own goal in that game. So I pick up the ground ball right in front of the crease, like cradle it out of my stick straight into our goal. And then also in that game, Jack Kelly scores a full field 2-point goal against Gitz, where like the quarter's not over and Gitz like goes into the goal to pick up his water, and meanwhile we shoot like a dumb shot and he saves it and throws it the length of the field, and Gitz is like standing there drinking, and the ball just like goes in right past his head.
He didn't have headphones. He didn't have headphones in, did he?
You know what? I think he was playing with headphones in.
I remember someone saying that. I forgot to ask him that.
Yeah, he did a lot in those times. Like for a little while there, he was switching hands sometimes in the cage, and then he also was playing with headphones in. But Rufus' soul was playing as the ball like went into the net. Correct. Yes, but I don't know that really would have changed anything, because what are you going to yell to him like get? And he's going to turn around and find the ball? Like it was too late. But it was the best thing, Hartsey, for me, because I had scored the own goal like 2 goals before that. So I'm like, oh my god, like I'm going to be the highlight of this game. Like Blaze lose 24-12, and like there's me like cradling the ball into the cage. Not one time ever in my entire life has anybody ever brought up that play, because 2 minutes later, Gitz gives up a full field goalie goal for 2 from Jack Kelly. So it was crazy. We did not, obviously, we get to the end of that game, and Hunt's is like, maybe we shouldn't have gone to Topgolf on Sunday.
Let me write that down. I'm going to write that down.
Maybe
not
it wasn't
the
worst one, but that was the most memorable loss of my pro career. My bonus submission was losing to you in the first round of the playoffs in the Cannons Lizards.
Yeah, it was a rough
in 2015 Gitz.
So I saw you guys going down the field. I'm like, this is, because I was obviously in the box waiting to come on the field, but when you guys went down the field, I'm like, this is not going to end well.
That was it. And people, that one does make its rounds on social media a fair amount, but if you haven't seen that,
you'll see it.
2015 Cannons Lizards, it's worth looking that one up.
We'll clip it up. We'll make sure we put it on one of the teasers.
All right, so now let's go to the other side of that. So the best win, or the most memorable win, and I didn't win a lot in my pro career. I'm very grateful and lucky that I got to win a national championship in college, and if it weren't for that, I'd have a trophyless shelf. So I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, fuck, like I can't pick like a random Blaze Florida launch game in mid-June. Like
got a lot of Hawaii. You got a lot of Hawaii championships though.
I do have that. So there's one that's special to me, that the 2018 MLL All-Star game. So it was Team USA against the MLL All-Stars. I was on the MLL All-Star team, which was basically all the guys who had just been cut from Team USA. So most All-Star games would not be a meaningful win. This one, obviously, like both teams are playing hard. You guys are playing hard because you're getting ready to go play in the World Games and you're having to develop chemistry and all of those things. For us, it's like, fuck, we just got cut. Like, let's prove let's prove that we deserved a spot on that roster. So that one was, and now look, you come out of that game and it's like, the game in the World Games is not the same. There's no 2-point line. There's no shot clock. Like it's essentially a different sport. So I don't think, at least speaking for myself or anybody, like you leave that game like, see, I should have made it like that. That's not really how it works. When you've been through this process, like there's 30 guys that are any given day, a lot of guys can be just as good as anybody else. But I just think from like a pride standpoint, and then like the level of play in that game, it was a really close game. I scored a behind the back goal. Will Manny, who was frustrated with being cut as well, had a huge game, scored the game winner. Kevin Rice, who was another guy who was really playing at a high level and didn't make the team, had a big game. And then it was funny because the ML All-Stars, like first time midfield, were like 3 Canadians. I think it was like Tenney and Courier and somebody else. And like they had a bunch of goals, so we were kind of like rallying behind them a little bit too. So from my side of it, that one was like
terrorists.
It was it was a memorable win. And then like there was a lot around that weekend, Hartzell too, like the PLL was starting and we were all like under NDA with Paul and Mike at that point. And the MLL did a presentation to us, so you guys didn't have to deal with any of this because you were doing USA training camp. So like we're there doing all the MLL media shit, and then Sandy Brown, the commissioner, like brings us into a room. And do you remember in like elementary school or like middle school when they had those projectors where they'd put like the clear sheet of paper and then like the magic marker they'd like write on it? It was like something like that. He like put it up on the screen and he like had this presentation about how they were going to build stadiums in every city. And like it was like coming out of like seeing Mike and Paul's pitch, which was like, tech bro, like we're really well thought out, like extremely good pitch with a vision for the league and like plans to raise capital and equity components for the players. And then like we get to that weekend, and a lot of guys at that point, by the way, were still waffling. Like they had gotten probably myself and you, but a lot of guys weren't all the way in yet. And that was kind of their chance to like really make a pitch for a bunch of us. And Kevin Rice, who's at law school, got into like, he's super smart, got into like every law school in the world, was at law school at the time at Wake. Like he ripped Sandy and like just asking like question after question, like, so where are you going to get the money to build stadiums when like
we're not even getting paid?
I make $7,000 a season. And so like it has nothing to do with the game or the win, but it was just like a memorable weekend. I think like going through that and being like, man, what's going to happen to pro lacrosse? And then like winning this super emotional game for us, at least for me, it was sweet to just, I don't get to play on the team, but at least I got to score behind the back on you assholes before you went off and won gold.
Yeah, and those games, man, like they're so intense. And it kind of reminds you like not of comparing it to like ice hockey with Canada, USA, but like you guys, we know that's coming too, right? Like on the other side of that, you're like, these motherfuckers are they want to murder us, and prove that. But those games were also so fun to play in because it was just so intense. And so that's an awesome one. But that's a mess that you had to sit through that presentation of Sandy Brown.
Yeah, you dodged a bullet on that one. What about you? What was the most memorable win for you? You've done a lot more winning than I have.
I was like going back and forth on this one. I landed on my NLL championship because like not a lot of Americans play the NLL. It's obviously box lacrosse is huge in Canada. It's getting a lot bigger here now. But like when I was asked to play box lacrosse, I was like, I don't know what the hell. I've never even experienced it. And then I landed on a team that was really awesome. I had Canadians that were so helpful and learned so much from. And winning a championship with the Washington Stealth was pretty cool.
Who were some of those guys? Who were some of those Canadians that were vets on that team?
Colin Doyle. He was. When I first got there, he was one of the best players, Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever play. When I got to the team, he lived in the same like apartment complex that I was in. They put us all up. So being there, he was there with his family. He was unbelievable. I mean, he was so helpful. Kyle Sorensen, Mike Grimes, Eric Martin, obviously, who we both know very well. He was, so good at indoor. He was a guy that I learned a ton from, obviously going to Salisbury and learning from him.
Most penalty minutes all time by an American in the NLL, I believe. That's an unfact stat that he told me, but one to be proud of.
We'll check that, but I'm sure he got a lot of penalties.
So. Probably checks out.
He got a lot of penalties. Reese Dutch, Lewis Ratcliffe, Cam Sedgwick. I mean, we had guys that don't play anymore. Jeff Sawicki. I mean, Jeff Sawicki was one of the best indoor players I ever. His hands, and he was just so damn good. But that team was very, very good. And
what I love about that is like none of those guys outdoor. Like you didn't name one guy right there besides Emart.
No.
And I think that's something that's so cool about. My bit is like hating on the NLL, but I obviously I don't. I love it, and it's like now there are a lot of crossover stars, but for a long time it was just like two completely separate groups of star lacrosse players with different skill sets. And I think it's really cool. I think it's something that's unique about lacrosse and we do still have that, by the way. Like there are obviously outdoor guys that don't play indoor, and there's some guys in the NLL that, like, if you're just a college lacrosse fan or a PLL fan, you probably never heard of, that are like some of the best lacrosse players in the world. So I think that's cool. It's interesting that would be the most memorable one that you picked, but like I would imagine winning an indoor. Did you guys win it in Vancouver?
No, so we were like the best team in the West that year. We played in Washington, Everett. So we played at sorry,
in Washington, not Vancouver. But did you win it at home?
Yeah, so we played at the arena at Everett, Washington. It was a semi-pro hockey arena. I want to say it sat like 8,000, and it was sold out. So that was another fucking really cool thing, because it was completely sold out. And then Everett, Washington is not much to do there, so wasn't really fun afterward. It was fun. We went back to the hotel room and ripped it up, but Everett, Washington's not the best place to celebrate.
Not a big nightlife scene there. All right, so we're getting close to kind of our hour mark, but maybe just as a last one, you know, we got into it through some of these stories, but there's pro lacrosse continues to be so unique, and I think your and I's hope for it is that this starts to change. And I think the PLL, as much as any, you know, in the history of pro lacrosse, is creating some of this change, but some of the travel and some of the expectations, some of the sacrifices that guys make to play in pro lacrosse, like, you know, this probably not so much anymore, but like I remember the MLL days, like you go play and you win a game in your rookie season, and then you go out on the town after the game, and then you wake up and miss your flight and you have to rebook your own flight. You're taking a loss on the weekend financially in some of those scenarios. So like, I'm curious if you've got any memorable or like good stories about like the worst, either like travel day or unique to pro lacrosse. You know, you already mentioned you played a semifinal game in a hurricane, which probably would qualify in this category. But what's another one that's just like a memorable, tough pro lacrosse travel experience story that you're willing to share?
I'm gonna name a couple. There's actually two. I could talk about this for probably an hour. But
we can do a whole episode.
I hate New York City traffic. So flying into LaGuardia, and then like obviously we all fly in before the games Friday. So we're flying in at the worst possible time. You get in at Friday at like 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, get your bags, whatever. And then you sit in 5 hours of traffic to Hempstead, where you practice, and then we get boxes of cold pizza after it was just that is one.
Yeah, but it's Long Island pizza.
It's Long Island pizza. Yeah, that's not my worst one. My worst was probably playing in Hamilton. And then when they're doing the anthem, you can hear the guys singing the anthem in the booth, or you can hear the guys announcing the game in the booth, not the anthem. But you can hear the guys in the booth. That's how there's like 2 people at the games. You know, you experienced that, I think. And we had to bus. We did a doubleheader. They thought it was a good idea to bus from Hamilton to Ohio. I don't know how long that bus trip was. And we had the worst coach bus of all time. The seats didn't recline. They were like wood panel seats. It pretty much was the bus in, Jackie Moon. What the hell is the movie? The Tropics.
Tropic Thunder.
No, not Tropic Thunder. The basketball movie with
I know
Will
what you're
Ferrell.
talking about. Yeah. Will Ferrell's basketball movie, whatever it is.
We'll tee this up, but it was literally the bus from that movie. It was absolutely absurd. Now, we were driving, and guys were laying in the aisles because the seats didn't recline, so we're laying on the floors trying to sleep. And we stopped at a rest stop, and I was like, I'm quitting next week. I'm not playing lacrosse anymore. Like, this is it. This is it for me. So that was definitely my worst experience traveling, for sure.
So semi-pro.
Yeah, semi-pro. That's what it is. Yep.
Semi-Pro is the movie, which is perfect. It's perfect. So, okay, so the story that I kind of came up with for this, because I had some of those, like diverted flight, rental car, drive 6 hours to get to, you know, whatever. Like I definitely had some of those experiences. Now I will say, shout out possibly future sponsor Delta, based in Atlanta. I really didn't have a hard time getting to a lot of games. Like, you played for Columbus, which is a tough city to get to play for Ohio.
Yeah.
Like, I flew Delta direct, mostly everywhere. Now, I did have plenty of spats with like MLL ops who wanted to book me on other airlines, and I would get on the phone and be like, I will pay the difference of whatever the ticket difference between Frontier and Delta is. Like, 2 options here. You can book me on Delta, or you can book me on another airline and I won't be on the flight and I'll book my own flight on Delta. So I didn't have as many bad flight experiences because of Delta's presence in Atlanta, which I'm super grateful for. But one just like really memorable kind of stretch was, again, I played in I think it must have been the 4th of July game. I played in that a bunch. Like the Cannons played in it, and like weirdly, I don't know why they put the Blaze in it a couple times, but I think it was a 4th of July game. If not, it was just like a midweek game in Denver on a Wednesday. So I stayed in Denver, and then obviously the night after the game Wednesday, then for the day Thursday, then Friday flew to Sacramento for the MLL All-Star game. Was in Sacramento this season. And this was a weird All-Star game weekend because Team USA tryouts were Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the following week. So basically like all those guys playing in the All-Star game are going to, it was like the early round of Team USA tryouts where you have like 65, 70 guys and you're playing 3 straight days of like a shit ton of lacrosse. So normally All-Star weekend's like, really fun and you go out and you hang out but this one was a little different because everybody's kind of like trying to prepare their bodies for that. And so Sacramento was also kind of a weird town to do it. It ended up being a great crowding, fun All-Star game, but playing the All-Star game Saturday. So play Wednesday, get to Sacramento, play Saturday, get on a plane, fly all the way back to Baltimore, get to Baltimore Sunday night, Team USA tryouts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They make a bunch of cuts Wednesday. Like, luckily, I kind of escaped through that cut. I was traveling with Gitz, with Adam Gittleman. He didn't. So,
what year is this?
It's the same one.
Oh, same,
it's that
okay,
same USA team. Yeah. He's disappointed. So then we get on a train on Wednesday night after, playing 3 straight days of the most intense lacrosse you can imagine to take the train to Long Island to play the Lizards you guys had this Lizards camp game every season or some shit like this where we would play on Thursday at noon. So we played Wednesday, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and now we had to get to Long Island for a noon Thursday game in front of a bunch of campers, in front of a bunch like a youth camp that they were doing at Hofstra or something like that.
No, they had kids. None of the kids went to school that day. The old local schools came to the game.
It was the weirdest decision. And like, I get that USA and the MLL are not the same governing body, but like your guys' Lizards team, like the whole team was at the USA trials. Luckily for the Blazers, like just me and Gitz, like we had Coach Hunts. So like a lot of our team was Canadian back then. So like we didn't have as many guys that were worn down, but it was an emotional, like USA obviously like matters to all of us. You play hard as shit those 3 days. Like there's an emotional come down off of that. And I remember taking that train up to Long Island, and Adam like especially was like frustrated and disappointed. And I'd be lying if I said we got Val, shout out Val, Adam's mom. We got to his house in Cold Spring Harbor, and she had a couple bottles of rosé and some pizza, some cold cheese pizza from Huntington. And we like blew off some steam that night, just like whatever. Like we got to play the Lizards at noon tomorrow, which, but like, again, if the game starts at noon, like warm up started at 11, like you're getting to the stadium at like 9 a.m. It's just like such a shitty time to play a pro lacrosse game. And we ended up beating you guys, which we had no business doing, but turning on the game, it was very clear, like Adam and I were a little worn out. Your entire team was like completely exhausted. It was like basically Team USA. It was like you and Paul and Rob and Will and like Joe Walters. Like everybody on your team was playing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So that was one that I'll always remember. That was just like, again, one of those weird games. Like you walk out there Thursday at noon and like everybody's gassed and we all just beat each other up all week. And then you look in the crowd and it's like a bunch of kids like sitting with a bunch of other kids with the same color t-shirts on because they're in like their camp groups or something. And it's just like, what are we doing?
And that describes that league.
So absurd. Oh man. Well, this has been very fun. I do agree. I mean, maybe we got college lacrosse and we got PLL season, but maybe in the fall we can have some more guests on and dedicate we could. You're right. Like if we could do this for an entire episode and just share some of these stories.
Just rename the podcast Lacrosse Stories. We could just tell them every freaking episode. There's millions of them.
I'm realizing though, I'm aware both the stories I told involved like going out nights before games. Like that might have been the only 2 times in my MLO career that happened. Just for clarity, I was pretty dialed. But, like the majority of the other occasions,
95% of the time I was down. 5% sometimes I went.
And I went 1-1 in those 2 games. Was that
Thanks for listening. Episode 5 is a wrap. Peace.
Yep. Shout out J Mills. Peace.
Hey, J Mills.